So I want to ask you a question. What is that one thing that you always sit back and say, I wish it wasn't the truth, but deep inside you know it's the truth? What is that one thing you have in mind? Everyone has it. And in this case today, I think this is not a thing that everyone has it. You have yours, I have mine, and if you try and look at them, you find them different. We all have the same thing we are sharing upon all of ourselves as Africans, as humans on this earth. And it is this. Bill Gates and the New World Order, we cannot escape this. They are facing us head on, and they have been prophesied even in the Holy Book of the Holy Bible. An international attorney confirmed that Bill Gates, we have another guy called Klaus Schwab, and many other WEF politicians are using climate change, pandemics, and wars to bring about total world control through the United Nations and World Economic Forum. This attorney declared that they must be stopped and should have been stopped a very long time ago. Now is the time to give humans unity. It's time humans unite and defend life and freedom. Earth is everyone's home. Nobody is more important. Nobody owns Earth more than any other person. There's so much that this professor shared in this specific interview. I want us to watch it, and then by the end of the video, we shall discuss it and have a deep critical analysis where I shall give you my thoughts and we shall have an educative experience with this video. So
that's why for so long, even the idea that we are not limited and bounded by availability of, let's say, gasoline, petroleum, or coal. Coal now they won't allow us to use, right? As you know, in COP meeting in Dubai that just ended a day ago, they just physically declared themselves that we should stop using fossil fuel. Basically, petroleum, natural gas, and even coal. I mean, these people are insane now, really insane. I think they're going to harm more people with their own delusion. Plus, I always remember, these are people who actually don't represent the majority. No. Since when are this put up to vote? It's always about this minority, the tyranny of the few, always robbing the whole census, the good census of the good people. This is part of the reason why, as a scientist, I also speak out. Not afraid of anything except for just telling the truth. And I'm glad to have this opportunity to say such thing in your show.
So, I mean, if we haven't been told the truth about where hydrocarbons come from,
right,
and we haven't, I mean, I've never met a single person in my life who said, wait a second, they're not all fossil fuels, then we keep hearing there's a scientific consensus on climate change. Every scientist believes the same thing about it, believes Al Gore and John Kerry. Maybe that's not true either?
Oh, that I can tell you, please. Thank you for asking that question, Tucker. I've been working on this subject of CO2 causing climate change, or what other factors we can ask that cause climate to change, for close to since my postdoctoral year, 1991, right? So it's about 32 years. And on this question, I think we have a very definitive answer. What we know now is CO2 ain't gonna cause nothing. It's not gonna change much of the climatic system, which means it won't change the speed of the hurricane. It won't change how fast or how frequent tornado form. It won't even actually make any difference to the polar bear population. It's all conservation issue, right, on polar bear. It won't even cause how much fish you don't catch, you know. It won't even cause what they call ocean acidification. It won't even cause this problem that they claim. It's all artificial. Everything they do, it's all dreamed from their model and the tyranny of the few again. That those few people just dream up this scary story that it just ain't true. And then when you come down to the most responsible group for this kind of bad stuff, I was reminded by my colleague, Dr. Ronan Connolly and Michael Connolly, my two co-workers with me on my group, is to say that since I work so carefully, and I have about more than 100 scientists the last 3 years alone working with me, so I don't speak on behalf of them, I speak on behalf of myself. My view is that the UNIPCC, United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is one of the primary problems, which means they have been misleading people. They've been using authority of science, which is not true, right? It's all governmental hackers, basically, right? People like John Kerry, who I guess can barely take a proper physics class, who keep claiming that greenhouse effect is so simple, right? And then he refused to explain how does it work, right? I mean, he did all of that. That is very terrible. That really embarrassing to America. He did that in Bali in Indonesia several years back. That is just so embarrassing.
Do you think he can explain how it works?
No, I don't think so. Even Al Gore, who claimed to know something about science, I challenge Al Gore. I did some of that in his face, actually. I was lucky enough to be in one of those Wall Street Journal eco conference, and I was giving, setting up with all the UC Santa Barbara students. Please make sure when the question comes out, give me the mic. I was making friends with them the night before. I explain now my details of my work. So I got the mic and I asked questions about Al Gore, because one of the primary sad things that they refuse to recognize, that I know you know that in even grade school sciences, CO2 is a gas of life. When you have more CO2, the plant kingdom, the whole ecology, even the oceans, gonna have more, basically, ability, more fishes, more everything.
More life.
More life, essentially. That's why it's called gas of life. And these people want to demonize it as some gas that can cause global warming, can cause hurricane to run faster or weaker. I don't know what they want. To have more rain, more droughts, and all this other nonsense that they claim. All of that, it just ain't so. That's the problem. By the way, this is how serious I am. I check everything they say. I check. As a scientist, you cannot just dismiss them. You cannot laugh at them. You cannot, chide them. You cannot just make joke of them. You check everything. So as a very serious scientist, and I publish scientific paper refuting all of these arguments. Scientific papers maybe mean nothing to the average people, but it's really important. It's like a document that you have to document and then put out the proper scientific arguments about what is right, what is wrong. So that's what we have been doing at my particular center called series-science.com. So anybody who wants more information about this, please go to the website, right? And study what we do there, because we are the one that is truly independent from any funding agency, any money that you could possibly give me, like Bill Gates. Please don't give me money. Thank you.
We need to meet a new constraint. And that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. And the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. The effects on the weather, perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, and so you get ecosystem collapses. Now, the exact amount of how you map from a certain increase in of CO2 to what temperature will be and where the positive feedbacks are, there's some uncertainty there, but not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad. I asked the top scientists in this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. Now, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
And Al Gore, please don't give me money. Don't give me any money if you tell me what to do. You know, even some of your money, I might not want it. But the point is that I want to be independent, just like you. In the media, I want to be fearless. I just set my own agenda. You don't tell me what to research either. I research what I want to research. So we've been researching on many, many topics. So on the climate change issue, I'm fully convinced. After all these years, even though we may not know exactly what is causing climate change, we suspect it's the sun. We have a lot of evidence to show that it's probably the sun. Very high percentage, you know, like I would say 90% for sure, but not 100%. But we know carbon dioxide is not the gas, it's not the what you call the like your thermometer in your room can adjust up and down that you can set the temperature to be whatever level you want it. First of all, they can never tell us what temperature do they want it at. What is the temperature you want to set the global temperature? Al Gore has not been able to answer that. John Kerry has not been able to answer that. Because we know the temperature from the coldest in Siberia to the desert in Sahara. I mean, these are huge, at least 100 degrees or more kind of differences.
Yes.
I mean, who are you to tell me which temperature is the correct temperature where you guys are talking like that? They are talking as if they are a pseudo-God, they're God themselves. I mean, these people are so ambitious that in some sense, I think we have to keep their ambition down a little bit. I mean, these people are not contented, just like what you put out there. If you cannot be ambitious when you're contented, but these people are so out of their mind in some sense that I think is misleading. And somebody had to speak out against them. I think you are one of those who consistently point out their hypocrisy, right? And I really find that the whole problem of this global warming is a complete nothing, which means we should do nothing about it. Just go on and live life and adapt to it.
Finally, let's take a look at the plans of Mr. Global and the controlled politicians and how these plans can be prevented. Amazingly, anyone can read what Mr. Global and his puppets, such as Klaus Schwab, the founder of the World Economic Forum, or Bill Gates, the Microsoft founder and world's largest vaccine investor, are up to. It is all out in the open. For many years, following in his father's footsteps, who was a convinced eugenicist, Bill Gates has been talking about the need to dramatically reduce the world population. For years, he has been in the headlines again and again for using alleged vaccines in Africa and India, which in reality led to the sterilization of women and girls. Klaus Schwab goes in the same direction and spells this out, for example, in his book, The Great Reset, and demands beyond that, supported by the current Pope, by the way, a world government under the UN, which has, in the meantime, been brought under control by the WEF. This is to be achieved by creating as much worldwide chaos as possible in the form of pandemics, wars, including civil wars and natural disasters, so that the world population becomes convinced that the national governments are overwhelmed and only a world government can help. At the same time, Schwab calls for the shifting of all wealth to Mr. Global so that in 2030, no one, except, of course, Mr. Global, will still own anything, but will supposedly be happy with that. In addition, and this is a central building block in Mr. Global's strategy, cash is to be abolished and replaced by a digital currency. This will be allocated to or taken away from every person in the world, who can then also be found anywhere at any time by various tracking systems. This is to be done by a single central world bank. Quite obviously, therefore, this is in particular the opinion of the psychologists and psychiatrists whom the Corona Committee has heard. When it comes to Mr. Global and his puppets, we're dealing with psychopaths and sociopaths. The vaccines are completely ineffective, as the example of Israel shows, particularly dramatically. There, 86% of the people treated in hospitals for COVID are double vaccinated. And the vaccines are highly dangerous. Through a whistleblower, it has become known that the numbers of deaths after vaccination in one of the U.S. registers have been falsified. Conservative estimates now arrive at least 500,000 deaths after vaccination since the beginning of the vaccine rollouts. In addition, there are other serious side effects such as neurological disorders, thromboses, myocarditis, and more. For the fall, winter, and coming spring, experts expect severe problems for those vaccinated when they encounter the so-called wild virus in the form of a cold or flu virus due to ADE, that's a cytokine storm, autoimmune diseases, and more severe cases of thrombosis, among others. Since these vaccines damage the immune system, not only will each subsequent booster cause more damage, but precisely the contact with the so-called wild virus will as well. All the massive side effects that have occurred in the meantime were known to the American CDC long before the vaccine rollout began. Worse yet, as evidenced by the now disclosed contents of both the manufacturer's documents submitted to the EMA, the European Medical Agency, and the manufacturer's secret contracts with nation states, the manufacturers do not know whether their so-called vaccine is effective. They do not know it. Nor do they know if it is dangerous. But they demand immunity from nation states in the event that claims are made against them for vaccine injuries. And they also explicitly demand that if there are alternative methods of treatment, which do, of course, make vaccines completely unnecessary, their experimental products must still be purchased. And here's another important piece of information. Through the WEF, initiated by Klaus Schwab in 1971, Mr. Global has been training his own puppets since 1992 through the Young Global Leaders Program. Angela Merkel and Bill Gates were among the first class to graduate, the class of 1992. Even a large number of current leaders, politicians, predominantly weak personalities with, however, mostly well-trained rhetorical skills, also come from this program, including Macron in France, Kurz in Austria, Justin Trudeau in Canada, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, but also the German Health Minister Jens Spahn and the EU Commission head Ursula von der Leyen. Against this background, which increasingly more people are recognizing, very large legal disputes have been set in motion or are now being set in motion in India, in South Africa, in the US, in Canada, and in France, among others. Their goal is to hold those who are responsible for this pandemic accountable under both civil and criminal law. The Berlin Corona Committee already now has extremely incriminating evidence proving that this corona pandemic never had anything to do with health. Rather, Mr. Global's actions are aimed solely at these goals. Destruction of regional economies to make the population dependent on Mr. Global's global supply chains, shifting the wealth of the world's population from the bottom to the top, to the super rich, to Mr. Global, population reduction, you can call it genocide, as well as Mr. Global gaining total control over the remaining population, and the installation of a world government under the UN, which is now under control of the World Economic Forum. We are dealing, this must be stressed once again, with megalomaniac psychopaths and sociopaths, which must be stopped and in fact should have been stopped a very long time.
So now, the concept of the New World Order has been a concept that has debated the minds of so many people in this world. And now, one thing we should discover about NWO is that it is a subject of debate. It's a conspiracy theory. It's not even a conspiracy theory, it's the truth, and it's out there. People have been intrigued, and conspiracy theorists have come up trying to explain what it is and what's its agenda. The doctor has explained, and now here is what we can gather from that video. It is often discussed in the realm of politics, economics, and sociology. The New World Order refers to an evolving geopolitical framework aimed at restructuring global power dynamics. So the New World Order advocates view it is a pathway to global cooperation, peace, and stability, while critics perceive it as a threat to national sovereignty and individual freedoms. Let's have a historical background of this NWO and this climate thing. Why are people coming together? Suddenly people have hated each other for a long time. Now people are loving each other. Suddenly. Why is that? When the deal is too good, you have to think twice. Somebody is benefiting from all this. Some New World Order has his history in this. It first gained prominence in the early 20th century, following the aftermath of the World War I. The establishment of the League of Nations was an early attempt to create a collective security framework promoting peace and cooperation among nations. Now, the League of Nations set the stage for a later creation of another world order that we call United Nations. After World War II, making another step towards a globally coordinated order. Now, United Nations is here to ensure we don't have Third World War. Do you think it's manageable? Do you think it's important? It is important, but it's not you can't, if it was written, it will happen. It will happen. That is what will happen. The idea of New World Order gained renowned attention towards at the end of the Cold War. In a 1990 speech, the US President George H.W. Bush articulated a vision for a new world order following the collapse of the Soviet Union, emphasizing a world where freedom, democracy, and the rule of law would prevail. This vision suggested a shift away from the bipolar world dominated by US and Soviet tensions towards a more unified, cooperative global community. You see, there's a proverb which says, the path to hell is paved with so much good intentions. Just because you're doing good things does not make you worthy of heaven, does not make your ways okay. Sometimes the end does not justify the means. The means itself should be scrutinized. And this is something that many people forgot while creating this so-called NWO, or when advocating for this NWO. It might seem innocent from the outside, but from the inside, it's bad. It's really bad. You should be mindful of things which are shiny on the outside. On the inside, it might not be as shiny as the outside. It could be rotten. Now, the key components of the New World Order are these. Number one, global governance and institution. A significant aspect of the NWO concept involves the establishment and empowerment of global institutions to manage international affairs. The United Nations, World Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Trade Organization, and other organizations are seen as pillars of this NWO. Proponents argue that these institutions can foster international cooperation, to mediate conflicts, terrorism, and economic inequality in different nations on Earth. A well-functioning system of global governance is believed to be essential for maintaining peace and stability in an increasingly connected world. Second is economic integration and free trade. Another critical component of the NWO is economic globalization. It advocates for the New World Order support, integration of economies, and the removal of trade barriers. Organizations such as the World Trade Organization and agreements such as the North American Free Trade Agreement and the European Union Single Market are viewed as mechanisms to promote economic growth and development. This rationale is that increased economic interdependence can reduce the livelihood of conflicts as nations become more vested in stable relations. This NWO is promoting peace. Do you think it's going to achieve that? I personally don't think it's going to achieve even democracy, because the NWO envisioned the spread of democratic governance and the protection of human rights as essential components of a stable society. This ideal aligns with the principles outlined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Democracies are believed to be less likely to go to war with another, leading to a more peaceful international environment. The promotion of democracy and human rights is seen as a way to create societies that are just, equitable, and free from oppression. That's nice, you understand? Now, collective security and military alliances is something that the NWO is ensuring. it's going to do, or it's ensuring that it's those which are already created are more powerful. We have the NATO, we have the UN, all that. What are some of the controversies and criticism facing NWO? While the idea of a new world order has its proponents, it has also faced significant criticism and skepticism. Critics argue that NWO threatens national sovereignty and individual freedoms by concentrating power in the hands of a few global elites and institutions. They fear that global governance mechanism might lead to a loss of local autonomy and self-determination, imposing a one-size-fits-all approach on diverse cultures and societies. The New World Order is also a popular subject among conspiracy theorists, who often associate it with the secret societies. You know it, I don't want to name it in this video, that one. And a hidden agenda to create a totalitarian world government. These theories suggest that the NWO seeks to manipulate global events to establish control over population, using economic crisis, wars, and other means as a tool for achieving their goal. This is what the doctor said. Furthermore, the push for economic globalization has faced backlash for creating inequality and exploiting development nations. Critics argue that free trade agreements often favor wealthier countries and multinational cooperation at the expense of smaller economies and local businesses. The emphasis on economic growth can sometimes lead to environmental degradation and neglect of social welfare. Now, what is the future of this NWO thing? Will we continue being fed this rubbish? We are still being fed by these people. They pretend they are offering donations, but they are taking away from us. How long shall the African suffer in the name of donation? How long will you as an African always accept donations? That's the question I'm asking you. The concept of NWO continues to evolve as the global landscape changes. Now it is 2024, the 21st century. Challenges such as terrorism, climate change, pandemics, hunger, and technological advancement have highlighted the need for global cooperation. Issues like cybersecurity, AI, and space exploration require international cooperation to establish norms and regulation. However, rise of nationalism, populism, and protectionism in various parts of the world suggest a counter-movement against the idea of a new world order. Many nations are reasserting their sovereignty, questioning the effectiveness and fairness of global institutions, and focusing on domestic priorities. The tension between globalism and nationalism is shaping the discourse on the future of international relations and governance. The concept of the New World Order represents a vision of a more interconnected and cooperative world, where global governance, economic integration, democracy, and collective security play central roles. While it offers the promise of peace, stability, and prosperity, it also faces criticism for potentially undermining national sovereignty and individual freedoms. As the world grapples with complex challenges that transcend borders, the debate over the NWO will likely continue, reflecting the ongoing struggle to balance global cooperation with respect for national autonomy and cultural diversity. Understanding the nuances of this concept is essential for navigating the future of international relations and shaping a world that can address the needs and aspirations of all its inhabitants. We don't need Bill Gates, we don't need your donations. Please, if you watch this video, we just need you to respect human life. There's so much allegations against Bill Gates. So much. If just any of them is true, we don't need anything from Bill Gates because they are always having strings attached. That is my video for today. I hope you enjoy this video and you stay more African than before. Yeah. Remember, I'm in Diani. I'm shooting a documentary, a mini documentary. So if you like this, my work, kindly subscribe. I will so much appreciate this. See you in the next one.